Hello and welcome to JRocks Pop Culture Revolution. This is episode number 31. And man, this is going to be another real fun episode. Hey, I know they all are, right? But okay, this is what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, this is the movie Them, okay? And Them, just in case anybody is wondering, is a 1954 American sci fi film. Um, that was released on June 19th, 1954, and it was directed by Gordon Douglas, and it was released by Warner Brothers Studio. Now, again, if you look at the cover of this beautiful DVD, you can tell it's kind of again, it's a science fiction film. It's about these gigantic mutant ants, like you'd never seen. Okay, so um, I just watched the film for the first time in many, many years, just last night, because I knew that I'd be doing this episode tonight. And so I wanted to watch the film, as I always do, and have it be fresh in my mind. And so it was quite an interesting film, and we're going to get into that. So the film starred James Whiteman and Joan Weldon. Them is considered to be one of the premier um, giant monster movies from the 1950s. And again, you gotta go back to the early 1930s for a lot of the classic Universal horror movies, which included like of course Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, King Kong. But by the time we get to 1954, this has a lot more to do with government, science fiction, the the fears of nuclear war. In fact, 1954, when this film comes out, is right after World War II. So, it's less of a horror picture, while there's definitely elements of horror going on through this picture, people being terrified of the gigantic mutant ants, but it has more to do kind of with science and the government and cover up and just things that are going on in the world. So again, let's talk a little bit about this, because by the time 1954, it's not so much about even being a horror film. It's more about just kind of these gigantic mutant ants. I mean, first of all, for 1954, you got to consider that the special effects going on in the film here, they were considered to be top of the art special effects. Now you look at it now, and they look kind of like amateur hour, but for 1954, these were really major special effects, and so there's also that to keep in mind when talking about the movie Them. The movie is about nuclear testing that takes place in the New Mexico desert. And as I said, giant mutant ants emerge and begin to attack human beings. The military and scientists team up and work together to stop the growing threat before the mutant ants establish new colonies. So again, on the surface, you think, oh, who's going to be scared of a little ant? Well, first of all, like I said, these are gigantic mutant ants, like nothing you can even imagine that you'd ever see in real life, and that's what made it so scary. That again, on the surface, to think who's going to be scared of a little ant? This is not a little ant. And when you see these gigantic mutant ants, it is really something to be terrified. And you kind of ponder and think for a minute, how would I feel if in my real life I saw some gigantic monster ant like that? How would I feel? Would I be terrified? And then to think if such a monster existed, to think what they could do to human beings, if they got that close to attack the human beings. So it is something to kind of really sit there and wonder about. The giant mutant ant spread into the sewer of Los Angeles. So again, this is taking place, of course, in 1954, but it's at the time it's taking place in modern day Los Angeles, the sewers of Los Angeles. And again, this is like no horror movie you've ever seen before. Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, they're all very, very scary. But these gigantic mutant ants are taking horror to really the next level. And it's more than just being afraid and terrified. It's just the thought that something like this could really exist, and what the world would be like if it did, and all the things could possibly happen. And for most of the movie, the scientists are trying to kind of find a way to do away with these mutant ants and find a way, to save the human race. And then there's that fear that if we can't kill all these gigantic mutant ants, this may possibly be the end of the world. I mean, again, just sit there and ponder that for a minute. I mean, how many times you turn on the evening news and you hear somebody talking about climate change or, I remember not too long ago, if you go back to the recent past, there was a big fear that, Y2K, that going back to the year 2000, that at midnight, when the clock struck midnight, oh my God, none of the clocks, none of the ATM machines, nothing that ran by computers is going to work anymore. It was going to be the end of the world. Guess what? The year 2000 came, the clock struck midnight. 2026 is here, 26 years later, very much still alive and well. The end of the world did not come. But just imagine for a minute, people at that time, going back to the year 2000, they were people. There were people 5 years in advance getting ready for the end of the world. They were packing up. They were creating these shelters in their basements at home. They were getting ready. People were ready for Y2K. It was going to be a major blackout. Nothing was going to work. The world was going to, but again, it never happened, folks. We're still here. We're talking about it 26 years later. Now, why you ask yourself, why was the movie important? Well, because again, the movie takes place after World War II. It's the dawn of the atomic age. American culture became obsessed with radiation and nuclear fears, and this film captured those very fears. So, again, because of what was going on in the world, and kind of interesting, if you look at what's currently going on in the world with the war in Iran and the fear of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, kind of the stuff that we're talking about in the movies kind of going on in the world in modern day, minus the gigantic mutant ants. But ever since the 1950s, people had fear of a nuclear bomb and what if and getting radiation and all this stuff. And so in 1954, when this film came out, they were kind of they made a film kind of playing off of people's fears that they were having at the time. And this kind of just brought that back to life. I mean, not so much that people believe that there were really gigantic mutant ants, but that was just part of the picture, just part of a needed ingredient to kind of put that fear factor into people. But it was very much about the nuclear age, this film, and kind of talking about fears that people had that were going on at the time. The movie then launched a wave of giant creature films, which included films such as Tarantula, The Deadly Mantis, Beginning of the End. The movie also launched later day classics such as Aliens and Starship Troopers. Now, here's a fun fact for you guys that I didn't know, but luckily I found this out, and so I was looking for it when I was watching the film, and I was able to spot this person in the film. It said, fun fact is that future Star Trek star Leonard Nimoy appeared in them before becoming famous in Star Trek. This is noteworthy because it was a role that where he played in the film, but it was an uncredited role. And again, it's something that Star Trek fans can go back and check out. If you look close enough, you'll find him in the movie. But if you're looking for the name of Leonard Nimoy in the credits, you will not find that. That's why they say it is an uncredited role. But kind of a fun fact, a lot of actors, especially when they're starting out early in their career, they will do commercials, and they will do bit parts and movies just to kind of get that experience of what it's like to appear in a film, And so that's a fun little thing I learned about the movie here. Now, some more fun facts I thought you'd be interested in knowing. The film was originally planned to be filmed in color, and it was also originally going to be a 3D film. 3D films were very big in the 1950s, but during the film's production, Warner Brothers Studios became very concerned about the film's budget, so they decided the film was going to be made in black and white. And interestingly enough, I think part of the reason when you watch the film, but it is so eerie and horrifying, is the fact that it's in black and white. And when these monsters come on the screen, the black and white gives it just kind of such a real eerie, spooky effect. And I don't know, you'd get the same effect if it was in color. I mean, it'd be kind of that little bit of horror when you see the monsters come on the screen. But if it was colorized, I think I don't think it would be quite as scary. I mean, the black and white on some of these classic films, it really gives it a great effect. Especially if you're watching like horror movies or science fiction movies like this, it just adds to the horror and the fear. Now, a big part of why this film about gigantic mutant ants was so scary is, I got to tell you, in watching the film last night, I got three dogs. I was watching the film, my Blu-ray player in my bedroom before I went to bed, and the dogs were in another room, but they heard the loud screeching, chirping noises when they were in the living room, and a couple rooms away. And when they started making the loud screeching, chirping noises, these ants, the dogs started going crazy with the noise. They were so terrified they didn't know what it was, and that was just how real scary the sound sounded. Dogs pick up on sounds that we don't even hear. I mean, a dog pick up on a sound maybe three blocks away that we don't hear, but they were hearing this big, loud, chirping, screeching sounds that the ants were making in the movie, like in the other room, and man, they were just going crazy barking because they didn't know what they were hearing. So that's kind of fun part, but I got to experience. And I bring this up because the chirping, screeching noises made by the giant mutant ants were created by using sounds of birds and tree frogs. Can you believe that? I mean, and again, when they make films like this and you're trying to scare the death out of the audience, I mean, the sound effects they use, like this, I mean, you're amazed when you find out, like, okay, that sound came from birds and a frog. You got to be kidding me. It sounded so horrific, but the sound was so horrifying that when you're watching this in a movie theater in 1954, I'd imagine the sound was so horrifying that you just were jumping out of your seat. You didn't know what you were hearing. You didn't know what was going to happen next. And very much like the music, and when these gigantic mutant ants would come on the screen, as the music and the sounds kind of build what's coming next. I mean, the fear, your heart just gets pumping. You feel that adrenaline of what is going to happen. Oh my God, I'm terrified. I can't believe what I'm seeing. Oh my God, what's going to happen next? And so that's part of the buildup in a film like this. Now, again, like I was saying at the top of the film here, in 1954, when this film came out, I mean, it looks like amateur hour, but these were major. These were considered top of the line special effects. But let's kind of get into what I'm talking about. The giant ant props. The fun thing about it is that they were props that were big enough for, and some of these ants were like puppet-like, where somebody would be able to crawl in these ant suits, control them like a puppet, um, and people would actually crawl into these big gigantic ants um, to help control the ant effect, and help with the ants moving around in that. And so again, to find out that no, these ants aren't like mechanical robots or anything. I don't believe they had technology like that back, but these are actually kind of puppet-like, where people can crawl into the actual ant suit puppet, whatever you want to call it, and they were able to control the ants with somebody inside. Just So when you're watching these scary ants, you got to realize that people are actually inside those ants, controlling the movement of the ants and how they walk around and stuff. So keep that in mind when you're watching this. And it said that okay, let's see. Okay, so it said parts of the film, the climax in the storm drain um, beneath Los Angeles strangely influenced later underground creature movies such as Aliens. I mean, again, Aliens is a movie came out like in the 1980s, and yet a movie from 1954 is having an influence on a future monster movie like that. Now another thing to keep in mind is the movie Them has a major historical context, in large part to the fact that in the last um, the last was because of all these extreme fears that people had. Like I said, go back in 1954. It's after World War II, and people are having all these fears, such as about nuclear testing, um, mutation from radiation, loss of control over science, hidden threats inside American cities that maybe you find out the government was trying to keep hidden or trying to keep secret. Why aren't they being honest about what's going on? Why are they trying to keep this from us? So for even going back to the 1950s, you had this fear of the government trying to keep secrets and not being able to trust the government, and so that's a lot of what was going on in here. The fears were especially intense in 1954 because of the tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. Now, here's a fun fact. The most famous quote from a movie is when a man entered. Let's see. Okay, yes. So this is the most famous quote from the movie. When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world. Oh boy, did he! Again, this was a real kind of fun film to watch. You just see that beautiful cover there, and if you were to see something like that in real life, a gigantic mutant ant, you would really you'd have some great fear, and you'd be like you'd probably be running the other way, trying to get away from it. And another fun part of this film is about the gigantic mutant ants is how they had to make sure that there were no more little ant nests to hatch. It was a little, as far as getting rid of the gigantic mutant ants, it was a little more involved than just setting them all on fire and shooting them dead. No, you had to make sure there were no more little eggs that could hatch. You had to get rid of all the eggs and everything. And so for a good part of the movie, once they identify what these ants are and kind of study them and figure out, okay, this is what we have to do to get rid of them, the scientists kind of come to the conclusion, well, okay, it's going to be a little more involved than just killing the beast, just setting it on fire and destroying it, because this was some kind of monster, okay, in the sense that some of these monsters, like you could set them on fire, you could shoot them, but if you didn't kill the eggs, they could rehatch. They could become reborn. Just again, like a monster you'd never seen before. And I tell you, the sound effects too was a big part of the film because I think, like I said, the way my dogs reacted to hearing the screeching noise, they were in another room and they were terrified. They didn't know what they were hearing. And I'm thinking maybe the frequency for the dogs just so crazy. So again, um, our latest episode that went up, last week was um, talking about 50th anniversary of Laverne and Shirley. So I thought, this would be a fun movie to kind of talk about because I don't think we've discussed a science fiction movie, and this has elements of a horror movie, but it's more of a sci-fi film too. It's talking about the government. It's playing on people's fears that they had at the time going on in the world. Talking about fear of the atomic age, people having fear about effects of radiation, being exposed to radiation, what might happen. Um, you mix that up with the fear of a giant mutant ant population that is going on throughout this movie, and then it takes a little more to just killing them and send them on fire. You gotta kill the nest. So a lot of thinking went into making this movie. It's a great fun story, and then I think another part that makes a film so fun is the fact that okay, yeah, they're playing on our fears, and the fact that okay, there's no such creature. This gigantic mutant ant really exists. Probably never encountered such a beast. But just the thought of it, just the possibility that who knows, maybe there's something like that out there that we just don't know about. That I mean, in my 50 years of life, folks, I've never encountered an alien from another planet. I've never seen it. I've never seen a UFO in the sky. Doesn't mean they don't exist. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But it's something to think about. Now, this was a really like fun episode to do, and I hope you guys enjoyed enjoyed watching this episode. I try to educate you on the film as much as I can. Each week when we do a new episode, we like to um, do somewhat on a different topic. Again, doing a pop culture show, we talk about everything from movies, music, classic TV shows. And I hope by now, after doing 31 episodes here, that every week when you tune in, you know you're going to be entertained, you know you're going to learn something, but you don't know exactly what you're going to tune in until you tune into it. You just know you're going to be learning about some great moments from pop culture history, and that's what we try to do here. I am Jason J. Rock Houston, and you've been watching episode number 31 of JRocks Pop Culture Revolution. And thank you for doing so, folks. And I want to also remind you that when we get together next week for episode number 32, we're going to be talking about one of my all-time great favorite classic TV shows from the 1960s. I'm, of course, talking about the fact that 2026 marks the 60th anniversary of the original Star Trek series, which is where we first saw Leonard Nimoy and, of course, William Shatner and DeForest Kelley. And we're going to talk all about it next week. So tune in. I will see you then. Bye for now.